Assalamu alaikum guys, welcome back. Let's get into it.
Iran has just bombed a US military base in Qatar, literally 15 minutes ago. Now I'll get to that in a second, but about an hour ago, Qatar shut their airspace and announced that they were expecting imminent threats of an Iranian attack on the US military base in Qatar. Now if you don't know, this is one of the biggest military bases in the Middle East, and it's where the US stores all of their aircraft for when they carry out attacks, like the attacks they carried out on Iran. In fact, we don't know, but it's very likely that the B-2 bombers which attacked Iran actually landed at this airbase in Qatar. Now, as this happened so recently, we don't have very much information at all. All we know is that Iran just launched 6 missiles at this US military base. Of course, it's very likely the US will now go to war with Iran, and it's always possible that Qatar will too, because it's Qatar that's been attacked. Of course, that will definitely drag in other countries in the Middle East, so it's very likely this is going to turn into something way bigger than any of us expected.
Iran said it would retaliate, and tonight it did, launching missiles at US bases in Qatar, with air raid sirens also sounding in Bahrain, home to the US Fifth Fleet. The main US base in northeast Syria is also on full alert. Airspace over much of the region remains closed. The Al Udeid Air Base is the biggest US military facility in the region. It's a key air and logistics hub with around 10,000 American troops stationed there. Iranian state media said the Al-Assad Air Base in Iraq was also targeted, but there have been no reports of any explosions there. All this after Israel gave details of its latest strikes on Iranian government sites in Tehran. Our international editor, Lindsay Hilson, reports.
Tonight, Qatar's air defences are active as Iran targets the US base at Al Udeid, just outside Doha. At least one missile was intercepted. Airspace over Bahrain and the UAE has also been closed as Iran carries out its revenge, Operation Annunciation of Victory. Last month, President Trump visited the 10,000 US service personnel at Al Udeid, the biggest US base in the region, sounding relaxed.
But I want to give a special hello to Al Udeid Air Base, sometimes referred to as the Deed. That's a little sinister.
Tonight, Iran reportedly coordinated its attacks with Qatar so the base could be evacuated, a sign that the Islamic Republic's revenge may be to some extent performative. The US base at Ain al-Assad in Iraq, shown here after an Iranian attack in 2020, is reported also to be under fire tonight. Then as now, the Iranians gave advance warning, retaliation as symbolism to save face. This morning, without warning, Iran fired a missile that hit the desert near Ashdod in Israel. The Israeli Air Force has also been in action. Earlier today in Tehran, a security camera captured the moment the Israelis struck Evin prison. People drove towards the explosion. One political prisoner managed to call his family, who recorded the conversation.
They dropped bombs on us. They're still bombing. Some people have been injured. The windows were ripped out. Everyone scattered. It's still going on. I don't know if it's targeted or not, because bombing a prison doesn't make sense at all.
Prison buildings were damaged and some prisoners reportedly injured. 2 French nationals are amongst those being held. People rushed to see if their family members had been hurt or had escaped.
It's a complete disaster. I feel like I'm losing my mind. They've hit Ward 7, Ward 9, the solitary confinement wing. They've destroyed everything. My son's life is in danger. Why won't they release him?
A few miles to the west in Karaj, Israel targeted a Revolutionary Guard headquarters, as well as routes to the Fordo nuclear facility, presumably to prevent access. Satellite photos show that the US bombing damaged the site, but it's impossible to confirm President Trump's assertion that Iran's nuclear program has been obliterated.
At this time, no one including the IEA, is in a position to have fully assessed the underground damage at Fordow. Given the explosive payload utilized and the extreme vibration-sensitive nature of centrifuges, very significant damage is expected to have occurred.
Iran's foreign minister was in Moscow trying to drum up diplomatic support.
These aggressive actions by Israel and the US are completely illegitimate and violate international rules and norms. We are defending our sovereignty and country, and our defense is legitimate.
The Russian leader has been lukewarm in his support for his ally Iran, condemning the US and Israel, but showing no desire for military engagement.
This absolutely unprovoked aggression against Iran has no basis or justification whatsoever.
European leaders are doing a diplomatic dance, professing themselves in favour of talks, not strikes, while seemingly glad that the Americans have done the dirty work.
NATO has said Iran should not, and this is a consistent position of NATO, Iran should not have its hands on a nuclear weapon. So, and I would not agree that this is against international law what the US did.
In Tehran, state TV, broadcasting sporadically, is trying to rally the nation, playing Moeen, a beloved singer previously banned by the country's Islamic rulers. I love my homeland, he sings, the wellspring of art and culture. Patriotic music for Iranians as they wait to see if America and Israel.
I just want to pause it there and say that, Iran was attacking Doha or Qatar, but they gave warning. We all know they're going to attack US bases, but look at the courtesy they gave to Qatar. They warned them they're going to attack them, so they cleared the base, And now you see that Israel saying that, they give a lot of citizen warnings, but they cut off the internet. How does that work? It's double standards, man, But at least Iran gave signals, okay, this. But I wish that Iran bomb Turkey oil port, which goes to Israel. Therefore, Azerbaijan to Turkey, Turkey to Israel. That's the pipeline goes. If Iran blows up, Israel will suffer. Yeah.
Will strike their homeland again.
Breaking news on Qatar, because the authorities there have announced the temporary suspension of air traffic in the country's airspace in order to ensure the safety of citizens, residents and visitors. So Qatar closing its airspace, they say. And we also know from my colleague Frank Gardner, the BBC security correspondent, who says the BBC understands there is a, quote, credible threat to the US-run Coalition Air Operations Centre at Al Udeid in Qatar. He says the country has temporarily closed the airspace and they've been told that the airbase is in a state of high readiness. The threat is believed to come from a potential Iranian missile attack. Al Udeid is a massive base, as we were hearing, in Doha, in the Qatari capital. It's home to the US CENTCOM's headquarters for all its air operations in the Middle East. And it's also where British military personnel serve on rotation.
Iran has officially decided that they will be suspending all cooperation with the International Atomic Energy Agency. This means that never again will Iran have to submit themselves to inspections by the IAEA, which is a U.S. Israeli-controlled organization that just seeks to basically lie about what countries who are enemy states of the United States are doing with their uranium, okay? And what this also means is that if Iran wants to create a nuclear bomb, they can do it now, and no one's gonna really know what's going on. I mean, of course, we'll have people making their best educated guesses, but no one will know where it's happening, which facilities they're working in, how many centrifuges they have, what percent they're enriching their uranium at any given moment. These were all things that we knew when Iran was in the IAEA, but now no longer. Okay, this is very big news. Now, a lot of people might be wondering, what is the point of Iran even having been in the IAEA in the first place? Well, by being in this organization, Iran was opening themselves up to transparency and letting the international community see what they were doing with their uranium, showing the international community that they were not making a nuclear bomb. And the hope is that in doing this, Iran would not put themselves in a position where they would be attacked by Israel or the United States for creating a nuclear bomb, because everyone could see that they're not. In doing this, the world would hopefully not sanction Iran because they're not creating a nuclear bomb, but the world did sanction Iran, okay? So clearly this whole thing of being in the IAEA didn't really work out, being a whole non-aligned country, we're not going to have our nuclear bombs, this didn't work out. The truth is, the countries who do have nuclear bombs and use them as a deterrence, as a mechanism to say we can defend ourselves, so those are the countries that are doing okay right now. I mean, Pakistan, North Korea, Belarus, okay, these are countries that are doing all right. If you look at Iran, not doing so well because they said that they could just join the IAEA and they didn't have to worry about any of this stuff. They didn't have to worry about defending themselves. The international organizations would protect us. Well, they learned the hard way, and now they're probably going to be creating a nuclear bomb. I mean, that's just what former president of Russia, Medvedev, said yesterday. He came out and said, and I quote, "The enrichment of nuclear material, and now we can say it outright, the future production of nuclear weapons will continue for Iran. A number of countries are ready to directly supply Iran with their own nuclear warheads." And I will say that the rumor on the street that North Korea has offered to supply Iran with nuclear weapon technology is true. That is the rumor. It is now the fact on the street that North Korea has offered this technology to Iran to give them warheads. The Iranian foreign minister is in Russia today. Probably that discussion will come up when he meets with President Putin about what they're going to be doing about this. So, in short, President Trump's decision to bomb Iran's nuclear sites, which failed, by the way, they didn't destroy anything, actually, fast-tracked the process of Iran producing a nuclear bomb when they otherwise were not going to do so if the United States had just negotiated a fair and just Iran deal with the country.
Boom, it's already happened. I told you guys that they were going to change their excuse for being in Iran from, weapons of mass destruction, just like Iraq. This time they have nukes. Well, they don't have nukes. Well, they could have a nuke, but they could have a nuke many, many years later from now, so we got to go in. But once you get in, I told you that they would go to regime change. And so that gives you a reason to stay there. If their nuclear facilities are gone, we don't need to be in the war. Okay, the war's already over, right? And in fact, a lot of MAGA was saying that yesterday. Well, now Donald Trump on Truth Social said, "Yep, just kidding. I meant regime change." Even though Pete Hegseth and J.D. Vance were on TV today saying, definitely not regime change, definitely not. And now Trump says, definitely regime change.
I just want to pause it again and say that, Trump just changed his mind now. So ideally he wanted to end the nuclear program, and now he changed his mind. Now he's saying that he wants to do a regime change. So basically change the leader, change the whole structure of Iran, and basically to invade. That's what he's saying, like what they did with Iraq. They want to do the same thing with Iran. But the thing is, the steps that they've been following Iran, that IAEA and all that stuff, non-proliferation treaty and all that. If Iran backs out and says, "Alright, we're not gonna let you inspectors come in and check our stuff," basically they're like spies. They told the Americans that Iran's not building anything, which they give them as the sign. Okay, they're not building anything. We use as an excuse to bomb them. Because if you see the videos that Netanyahu, he's been saying Iran is about to develop nuclear weapons, God knows how long now, many years now, and still evidence shows they haven't done it. But this only shows that they are planning to invade Iran. So we got to see what's going to happen in the future.
That means stovetop, we're staying. So they're going to be in it for the long run until we get a regime that is friendly enough to Israel that they will accept it, and then they will permit American politicians to leave the war a decade or so later. Okay, fight against this, unitedagainstwar.com, and watch the Young Turks weekdays at 6 o'clock.
A senior Iranian lawmaker now reporting that in what they call a decisive response to U.S. aggression against, again, what they call Iran's peaceful nuclear facilities, the Iranian parliament has voted to close the strategically vital Strait of Hormuz.
This is one of the ways that Iran can strike at the United States and the West as a whole dramatically with immediate effect. The effect this would have, if it's verified, on oil prices will be felt in markets, I would think, starting on Monday.
The UK is deeply complicit in what is happening in the Middle East.
Why do you say that?
When we talk about arms sales, the UK government suspended 30 out of 350 arms licenses. 90% are still active, including components of lethal F-35 fighter jets. Now, the government will talk about directly or indirectly, there are F-35 components that are leaving RAF bases in this country, are being transferred through Heathrow and other airports in this country that are going to Israel. Every bomb that is dropped, we have to ask the question, are those lives that are being killed, is the UK complicit? Are we complicit in that? And the evidence says, yes, we are. Hence, there is a court case where the UK government has been defending sending these components to Israel, and we should be suspending all arms sales. We should be not trading at all with this Israeli government. In fact, we've allowed the US, in particular with the Iran context, to fly through our airspace. In '73, Edward Heath, a Tory Prime Minister, refused to allow US planes to go through UK airspace to take part in a...
But what they've been doing in the last few months, the 3-month blockade, starving already impoverished, war-torn, innocent civilians in the main, women, children, and then as they queue up, desperate for the small amounts of food coming in, opening fire, and being so disingenuous about, well, there are question marks over all of these. Well, let me answer the question marks. Here's how we can do it. You said it about Iran earlier, but what about the fact that Israel continues to refuse to allow international journalists, including the BBC, into Gaza? There's only one reason they don't want journalists in Gaza. They don't want them to see what is actually going on. If there's nothing to hide, let the journalists in.
And as we said to the ambassador, to the Israeli president, there are more than 10 occasions where there has been shootings around those food queues, which I think the vast majority of people looking at would think that's an incredibly shocking.
Israel just bombed 3 hospitals in Iran, and they've injured thousands of Iranians. Although something important, the day after this, despite the risk of being attacked, hundreds of thousands of Iranians started marching in support of Iran against Israel and the US. Of course, though, it's now been a week since Israel carried out their first attacks on Iran. And since then, the attacks between Iran and Israel have only been getting bigger, as I'm sure you know. In fact, just today, the Israeli defense minister said, quote, "We must strike at all the symbols of the Iranian regime and their regime's power base. For example, monuments and the army." Although, on the other hand, I'm sure you know, Iran has been responding to Israel's attacks just as much, and they've been launching hundreds of missiles into Israel pretty much every day. And just yesterday, if you don't know, Iran launched missiles at an Israeli military base in the Negev desert, and they also injured 24 people in Haifa, which is the port city in Israel. However, something really important, which is actually quite a positive thing. Yesterday, the Iranian foreign minister visited Switzerland to have a meeting with European leaders about the current conflict between them and Israel. Although sadly, from what we can tell, those meetings actually didn't really get anywhere, and the Iranian foreign minister said that himself. In fact, according to the report, he said that he was really concerned with the European leaders' refusal to condemn Israel's attacks on Iran a week ago, which started this conflict. But he did also say that Iran is still open to having peace, even though these European leaders didn't really talk about it. He said, quote, "Iran is ready to consider diplomacy once again, but only once the aggression is stopped and Israel is held accountable for the crimes they've committed." So it seems there could be peace. Iran seems open to it, but at the moment the war's still going on, and so we don't really know what's going to happen now.
Guys, I'm going to end it there, and if you're new to the channel, please like, share and subscribe. Assalamu alaikum.